weighed against the sheer monotony of doing mental capacity assessments and risk assessments and going through folders and all of that nonsense, I've had Marilyn Manson playing in the background.
Well, funnily enough,
Which,
my prep today, because before I recorded the first podcast today, I had to write an essay about Final Destination.
Okay,
the movie.
interesting.
Yeah, as part of the Machine Mean are doing a series on supernatural horror movies, and I bagsied. I got Candyman and Final Destination.
Oh, you got Candyman.
I did.
Wow, that's a contrast.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's kind of why I wanted to pick them. I kind of like the fact that they feel like very much yin yang in some ways.
Totally. So you got the artsy horror film, which
Yeah.
is Candyman, and then you got the really sort of popular
The kind of
franchise
Yeah.
horror, which is Final Destination.
Absolutely, the kind of uber kind of summer teen popcorn horror movie, arguably of the last sort of 10 years or so.
Almost the epitome of.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's
which
pretty...
is sort of, it's built around the premise, it's built around the concept,
But it is a great concept, I think, and I talk about
it is a
that
brilliant concept, and it's lots of fun,
Exactly.
It's that level of horror where you just go to the cinema to sort of like go, and laugh a little bit. It's not serious. It's not going to scare you or anything like that.
No, I think what I really like about it is how, because for me it's like Scream should have killed that kind of movie dead forever.
Totally, but did not.
No.
Actually spawned an entirely new raft of them.
An entire new generation, but I do give Final Destination credit for finding a way to kind of bring it back by coming up with a new concept. Instead of it being the guy in the mask with the axe, it's just death itself. What a fucking great idea, man.
It's slightly meta, that
it
isn't
is.
It's almost like they're slightly parodying the... in the same way that Scream did, they're slightly parodying the format of the slasher film. Because, like, the whole thing with the slasher film, certainly after the likes of Halloween and Friday the 13th, is that they're trying to establish a franchise. They want to get, like, that iconic movie monster that you can endure for multiple sequels and potentially remakes, and that you can make action figures of and whatnot.
Yeah.
You don't really get that in Final Destination.
No, you do not. No, but ironically, the idea they did come out with did spawn another massive franchise. So they did it. They found another way, and I love that. I love the inventiveness of that, and I love the way it's just like, because it's an archetypical popcorn horror movie. Here are some teens, and we're going to kill them off one by one in really inventive ways.
That's it. I mean, that's all it really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is just a framing device for elaborate deaths. But what I like about Final Destination is it doesn't care.
No.
It doesn't have pretensions about it. I have problems with, for example, Saw.
Right.
The Saw franchise. I have enormous problems with it because it's one of those things where I watched the original Saw and people were going nuts over it. They were going nuts. And I was like, it's just like every other slasher film. It tries to be something different. It tries to paint itself as something slightly different, slightly cleverer. It's not. It is just a framing device for the really elaborate deaths. That's it. That's at the core. When you strip it away, when you pare away all of the gumph around it, that's all it is. It's the same basic skeleton as the likes of Final Destination.
Yeah.
But it's pretending to be something different.
But
it's pretending to be clever.
But I do love the way Final Destination just puts its hands up in the air and just says, "Yep."
It's
death
I mean,
itself,
it's wry.
So you're always fucked. It's so great.
Yeah, it's wry, isn't it?
It is wry.
It doesn't pretend that it's going to do anything like really profound, or it's going to comment upon anything or anything like that. It's just like, here's the situation, this is what's happening, here's the characters, we're going to kill them all off in very inventive ways, maybe some of them will survive at the end. You know how it goes.
Yeah. But what I do like though is that underpinning it, actually, there is a kind of very interesting, I think anyway, I find it interesting, like philosophical question about predestination
and the nature of death.
And like the Final Destination universe contains a death that is a kind of actively malevolent force that decides when you die, and you have no choice in it. And just before you die, I'll send you these little clues that you're about to die by telling you.
And actually, gets pissed off.
Yeah, and
when
then
you get away.
Exactly.
It actually gets pissed off. It gets annoyed, which is it's rather funny.
Piss off death, look out, because then your end is going to be not just sudden but inventive.
Incredibly inventive, and unlikely. Yeah,
I
like that.
love that. I really do. I just think it doesn't get enough. I don't think it gets enough credit.
It doesn't get enough credit, as they go, because because there were a lot of them.
Yeah, I've
around
only
that
seen
e-
the first
there.
two. I don't have any interest.
I just mean generally like the franchises around
Sure.
that era. There were so many of them,
Mm.
but that one does stand out because it is not a hook-handed killer, or it's not a guy in a raincoat or a mask or whatever. It's something slightly more metaphysical, so it can play with ideas.
Yeah, and I just like the central premise of that. I really enjoy it. And as I say, for me, it's like, whereas I think most of the franchises that came afterwards either tried to ape what Scream did, or tried to pretend it hadn't happened really, and just tried to do the same old shit.
Yeah, they kind of tried to, sort of, culture hasn't changed at all. People are not aware. Let's just put the blinkers on. You technically you can't get away with it anymore after Scream.
No, and I do feel like Final Destination is a response to Scream. I think it is an honest attempt to say, okay, but if we did still want to make that kind of movie,
there are ways around
how could we
it.
do it? And this is one way, and they found this really cool way of getting it done. And it means you have these like just gleefully demented death scenes that you can really enjoy. The real old-fashioned enjoyment of just like, wow.
There's a sort of winking at the screen quality to Final Destination that I appreciate.
Completely, yeah.
It's what it's when it shows you the setups for the deaths.
Yeah, but also it keeps you guessing. It's quite fun. Yeah. There's an almost Hitchcockian game there.
Yeah,
there's a very grand name to attach to Final Destination, but there is, you know what I mean? Like,
it's the bomb under the table, isn't it? It is.
Right.
It's exactly that. You know what's there as the audience, and you know something is going to happen. You're just waiting to see how it pans out.
But it's also the suitcase of money in Psycho, because sometimes it's misdirection. A lot of the times, it's leading you down. I mean, I love the scene where the kid's like shaving with the razor and he kind of cuts his throat and you can see the water creeping towards his feet, and then he puts the razor down and walks away, and it's all that kind of stuff, and then the water changes course. It's so great.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so great.
God, it's been. Then on the other hand, you've got the Candyman.
Yeah, I haven't rewatched that yet because I don't have to do the essay until I think October, so I've got a little bit of time. I've got to catch up on Candyman.
Film.
Yeah, well, it's still on the My Life in Horror shortlist as that project sort of heads towards its final kind of final dozen essays or so.
Yeah, actually,
Candyman's
now that I think about it, that's one of the only things I haven't done in the Barker retrospectives yet.
Oh, interesting.
It's one of the only ones, and it's interesting because it is the most successful of the film adaptations of Barker's work. I would say.
Maybe that's worth coordinating on then. Maybe we could think about, because if I've got to watch it for the essay anyway, we'll check out the dates. But if it works, if we rewatch it at a similar time, we could do a podcast off the back of it as well.
That sounds great.
It was a big deal to me, that film, as an older teenager, young 20s. That was a big deal. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, I remember watching it and not necessarily comprehending how profound it actually was and is, but sensing it.
Absolutely.
when you're watching something that's got a bit more weight behind it and a bit more resonance. I mean, I met Tony Todd at a convention. He was there to promote any horror film, but because he was the voice of all things. He was the voice of one of the characters in one of the live action Transformers films. That's what he was there to promote. And I actually got to talk to him, and I wasn't talking to him about the Transformers. I was talking to him about the Candyman.
Of course.
He's impressive.
Yeah.
Bloody hell! You're like, the presence of the guy is insane. He's really intimidating. He's like not in an aggressive way or anything, but just like he's so interesting to look at and so statuesque. What he looks like a carving of some sort of old god that's come to life.
Yeah.
He's amazing to look at, and his voice is gorgeous. His voice is beautiful. He has this kind of cultivated accent where he sounds almost like there's almost an English quality to his accent. He pronounces words in this very beautiful way, and it's very slow and rhythmic and deep. So you get slightly hypnotized.
Yeah.
It's slightly weird. It's odd being around him, and I really, really enjoyed talking to Tony Todd. He was an interesting chap, yeah?
Yeah. And of course, he's in Final Destination as well.
He is, yes, as the consistent character.
Absolute
in the Final Destination
show stealer in the first movie, man. It's so great. He's only in that one scene, and he just completely, for the whatever it is, 4 or 5 minutes he's on camera, he just grabs you by the lapels. It's like, okay. Well,
Tony Todd's an interesting one, isn't it? Because he is an amazing presence. He's got that actorly quality where the camera just whatever he's in, the camera just wants to look at him.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and you just want to look at him as the audience. He just has that quality about him, but he very rarely does starring roles.
No, that's right. It's very. I mean, Candyman's the only one that immediately springs to mind as
Yeah.
being, where he is front and center the whole time. It is, as you say, it's often, yeah, character pieces or bit parts or whatever.
Supporting roles, like in The
Yeah,
Crow, for
absolutely.
example, where he's the
Yeah.
henchman of the main bad guy. Which, given the way he looks and the way he acts, it's amazing that he hasn't had a more prominent role than this.
Yeah, you kind of wonder that it feels to me like there's just a TV vehicle waiting to happen for him.
God almighty, yeah, like a Netflix thing or
Absolutely. Where he
some
just,
massive Amazon show or
Yeah,
something where he's
definitely.
catapulted to superstardom through it.
you'd hope,
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, and he's a brilliant character actor as well.
Yeah,
I mean, you
yes.
look at him in The Candyman and he's like, wow. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of elements going together. It's the framing, it's the cinematography, it's the mixing, the sound. But he is just so amazing to look at
Yeah, he
in
is.
that film.
Yeah, he is.
And when you first see him, it's that long shot where he's just in the distance and there's nothing going on. There's no like clever camera trickery or anything, but he's just there.
Yep.
And suddenly, this big guy with the coat and those incredible features that are just
Yeah.
like perfectly symmetrical. Like in the way of something sculpted.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that's an interesting horror monster.
Yeah. I wonder where this is going. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
It's great stuff. So so I was writing about Final Destination and listening to Antichrist Superstar on vinyl because I have
Yeah,
the,
vinyl.
yeah, I
Wow.
have the heavy 180 gram pressing of Antichrist Superstar. It's actually a
Very
funny
cool.
story. The reason I've got that on vinyl is so the guy who got me into Marilyn Manson when I was a teenager. So for his birthday, I mean this is 10 or 12 years ago, something like a long time ago. I bought him Mechanical Animals on vinyl.
Yeah.
Which is actually my favourite Marilyn Manson album.
Fun. I was just listening to Mechanical Animals
Okay.
before we came on, and yeah, I love both the tracks and the music videos from that particular album.
Yeah, they're wonderful. But so I bought him that as a present for his birthday, and then on my birthday he bought me Antichrist Superstar, which is his favourite Manson album. So we actually own each other's favourite albums on vinyl.
That's
which
very cool.
It is
isn't
cool.
it?
Yeah, it's cute.
I
So
like that.
I was listening to that today and trying to
The
get
mission statement. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just sort of getting my head back on because I listened to. So I got what I did was I got the 4 albums. So I got Portrait of American Family, and then the what I think of as the Antichrist trilogy, and maybe we'll come
Yes.
on to that at some point. But I got them on my phone, and I've been listening to them for the last couple of weeks, cycling back and forward from work. So just to try and tune back in.
Yeah, because it's an odd thing, isn't it? I was thinking
Yeah.
about this when I was listening to them earlier. They are like time capsules in many respects, in the same way
Yeah.
that like the tracks of Nirvana are,
Yep.
or the tracks of The Prodigy here in the UK, or the Sex Pistols, to which Marilyn Manson's work is related. That you can see. One of the things that I really get whenever I listen to Marilyn Manson or I watch the music videos is that you can feel the DNA of loads of music traditions all sort of swarming together.
Absolutely, it's a real he's a magpie, a creative magpie.
Clearly,
he just
clearly.
takes from, and I feel like he's got that thing where you just get the sense of a mind that is completely restless and
Yeah, and
endlessly
obsessed with lots of things
Yeah.
all at the same time.
That's right, and just absorbing everything around him. You
Yeah.
know, like voraciously absorbing the whole lot.
And just it creates these incredible, not just juxtapositions of images, which obviously you get in the name alone.
Yes, yes.
But he finds a way of making them work. He finds a way of actually making things that seem to be antipodean or counterposed to one another actually flow together.
Yeah, it's really impressive, and it creates it does actually create a new image that becomes its own distinct thing, and that's incredibly impressive. In fact, I was thinking, the way I imagine Manson's mind work is very similar to the description that the Doctor gives of the Joker in Arkham Asylum. That
Yes.
super sanity description. I do feel like when I'm engaging with his art, there is a bit of me that's like, it's a bit like that. It's a
Yes,
bit
where
like
he's
that
he
thing.
he's endlessly reinventing himself, like from one
Yes.
moment to the next.
Yeah.
And you actually see that not only in the music tracks, which are themselves deliberately dissonant, and they skip and change change and transform within the space of like a few bars.
Yeah.
But in the music videos where he plays multiple different characters at once, all of whom have these incredibly elaborate costumes and very different ethoses about them.
Yeah. Well, I remember vividly. I mean, my fandom with Manson peaked around the Hollywood album, and I was at that point. It was actually my first big foray into online experience. So it was this. It was
Right.
this, yeah.
Okay.
It was the summer of 2000. It must have been.
So kind of late on, I suppose, for
really.
Manson, because he kind of dropped into the music world and into not just the music world, but kind of culture.
Yeah.
Sort of in the mid to late 1990s.
That's right. Yeah. No, I think Antichrist Superstar was 96. I want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
And that was
Bloody
massive.
hell,
Absolutely
96.
massive. Yeah.
I started high school.
Right, and
Yeah.
Mechanical Animals was definitely before 2000, must have been 98, 99, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
But the thing was, I didn't have internet access until 2000, like reliable,
Right.
regular, until late 90s. So, and one of the first sites I went to was Marilyn Manson's website, because I'd heard a lot about his, how he was, the things he was doing with his website. And the forums in particular, that was my first real interaction with internet fandom, was via the Marilyn Manson forums.
I'll be honest, I don't know much about like the Manson fandom itself. I've never really engaged with it itself. So what is it like, or what was it like back then?
I have no idea what it's like.
What it's like
this
now.
Is like, we're going back 19 years now, God help me.
Because we're aging now, aren't we? I imagine like a lot of them have either fallen away, or have become something rather different from what you would expect them to be. I mean, Manson has always talked to a very particular audience, which is always the sort of what he was when he was a kid. It's the disaffected, it's the queer, it's the strange, it's the odd, it's the gawky, it's the awkward, it's the obsessive and creative individuals who are naturally outcasts in society. It's that carnival of freaks thing, isn't it? Which he takes and runs with completely. He actually takes it as an identity and runs with it and celebrates it,
Absolutely, yeah. And it was a fascinating community. It really was.
I can imagine. I mean, did you get like lots of different types of people there? Because when you look at his imagery and his videos, there's so much because of his magpie qualities. There is so much going on that I can imagine him appealing to lots of different types of people all at once.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And it was really, I mean, one thing about it was that it was a really chaotic community. I remember that.
I can imagine.
There were like 4 or 5 different boards, and they were split up with like, I can't remember. I can't remember what the divisions were, but there was like, maybe individual albums had their own boards, and maybe there was something about tours. But then there was one just called Marilyn Manson, and that's just where everyone went,
Yeah, that's like general chat,
Yeah, and it was just, I mean, it was a bulletin board, but it was just chaos. It was just, people just, I mean, that's the thing I remember kind of more than anything was the sheer volume of traffic on that site at that point as well. So you got to remember, this is the build-up to Hollywood coming out.
Yeah.
So he started, I mean, he marketed it really well through the website. He started with leaks of like samples of little bits of songs.
Yeah.
So like the opening of, I can't remember the name of the tune. It's something, Crucifixion in Space, Jin, Jin, Jin. And it was literally just that on a loop.
Yeah.
It was the opening kind of thing when you went to the website. So you had this like, it's from the new album. It's not telling you anything at all helpful about the new album. And then there's these images of him started appearing. There was a photograph of him with I think it was a lamb in one hand, and he had a rifle in the other. Like a proper hunting rifle. And he was shaved bald, which was new at that point to us. Last time we'd seen him, he had the Mechanical Animals hair. Shaved bald with the Mercury symbol painted on his chest.
Okay.
And that was just presented without comment. That was just
you interpret it.
Here's
basically.
what I'm up to now.
You decide what it means.
Yeah, me hanging out with a friend last week. I mean, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, so so you had that, and you had this kind of, so that kind of, you felt the speculation starting to build. Like, what the hell's he done this time? What is going on now?
Where's he going with it? You know, what new freakishness is going to erupt?
Right.
From
and
this?
The other thing as well, of course, is that Hollywood is the post-Columbine album, right? So Mechanical Animals had come out, then Columbine had happened.
Yeah.
Because Columbine was 99, and that was... Columbine had a profound impact on me emotionally. It's still one of those kind of world events I remember very, very vividly indeed.
Me too. What I do distinctly remember is that that was what really broke. I mean, it's a bizarre thing to say, but it's what broke Manson in this country in many respects, because he filtered through. I mean, he was known when things like Antichrist Superstar came out. Obviously, that was a significant album, and he had his fans here, but his name suddenly, you started hearing his name on the BBC, you started hearing his name, seeing his name on the front of like right-wing rags who were trying to find scapegoats for the actual atrocity, you know? And suddenly I was hearing his name everywhere, and I remember, because I was only a kid at the time, so I remember not understanding, like, it was the beginning of my developing of critical faculty when it came to news media, basically.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Because I remember hearing his name in connection with this Columbine event, you know, which I knew was a high school shooting, and it was like atrocious, you know. And I was like, I remember thinking to myself, what? I don't understand. I don't understand why I'm hearing this guy's name in connection with this constantly. In fact, his name was mentioned more consistently in our news media than the actual shooters.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, I remember I was working in a pub in London when Columbine happened. It was my own kind of year of minimum wage employment.
Right.
And it was a pretty bad year for me. But I remember that the reason I remember it so vividly was because the pub chain about a month before had made a deal with the Express newspaper, so we got free copies of the Express every day. And I'd God help me, this is how bored I was. It meant I read the Express.
Bloody hell, you must have been in the doldrums there.
It did not improve my mental health.
Yeah, I bet it didn't. I bet it bloody didn't. That's kind of like, it's like starting cigarettes because you're bored, isn't it? You know.
Can you imagine reading Peter Hitchens every single day? I mean, just
no, I can't.
Like a page of Peter Hitchens.
Bloody hell, Jesus Christ!
So
no,
I
was
not
that.
in a good way. I mean, it was fascinating. It was a window into a mentality that I found completely incomprehensible. It's hard,
and that you're
really
entirely counterposed to. I mean, it's almost like it's the contrary of you, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, even in '99, where I probably wasn't as politically aware as I am now, it's still pretty bad. Yeah, it's still just on a gut level, it just feels wrong, you know. But I remember they're reporting. I may even still have the paper. I don't know if I kept it or not. I kept it for a long time. But their headline was, it had a picture of one of the killers, and it just said, "Insanity is healthy," was the headline, in quotes. Because that was the line that they'd put as the Trenchcoat Mafia in the yearbook. That was their kind of motto of the Trenchcoat Mafia kind of thing. And I remember just reading it with just this complete sense of like, I mean, there's the horror of the narrative of the bully kid becoming a murderer, and there's the horror of the kind of displaced guilt you feel as a kid who was bullied, and maybe had the odd revenge fantasy yourself once
of
in a long
course while. There but for the grace of God kind of thing.
That there's a little bit of that, which is not comfortable, that
no,
is
of course
just
it's
inherently not comfortable. And of course they completely sensationalized the Manson connection. They completely sensationalized
totally.
And it's I mean, it's almost the thing about it is it turned out to almost all be bullshit. Like they
Almost all
weren't.
of it. I mean, it was total bullshit, wasn't it?
Yeah,
As it
that's
turns
right.
out, it was an almost entirely media contrived bit of bullshit, as always happens, and as always happens with. I know that we bang on about it on these podcasts, and I do apologise for that, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, no, I fucking don't.
Nah.
But it's always the right wing press, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is.
They always contrive these scapegoats, and the reason they do that is very clear. They're diverting from the fact that the world they create is what actually cultivates these atrocities.
And the demons
That's what
that's
it
right.
is.
And the demons are always the arts. It's always the arts. It's always
It's the
some
art. It's
creative
video
thing.
games.
Yeah, it's video games. It's movies. It's music.
Child's Play 3 for Jamie Bolger.
Christ's
You know,
sakes.
I know, right? The
Like
most
Child's Play 3 could fucking inspire anything except.
Exactly. And of course, then you look into and also, I mean, this is another thing about these events. It's the fact that people want the easy answers. They
Yeah.
just want a scapegoat. They want an easy answer. And the raw fact of the matter is there are hideous complexities that lead to these kinds of events. Hideous
Absolutely.
complexities that we are all. Another thing, it's a shifting of blame. It is literal scapegoating in that regard, as
yeah, it
in
is.
like the age-old, the ancient tradition of heaping the sins of the populace onto a scapegoat and sending it out into the desert to die. It is literally that. It absolves us of responsibility for these events when we can just say, oh well, they were monsters, or they were made deranged by a piece of music or by a video game or whatever. It's an easy answer. And what I find ironic about these things is that it's no answer at all.
No, it's absurd. It's as absurd as I don't like Mondays. It doesn't mean
Yes,
anything.
the
It doesn't
minute
move
you
any further
start
forward.
applying a little critical pressure,
Yeah.
it does. You start to realise that the connection doesn't exist. There's actually,
right.
it's not even flimsy. It doesn't exist. It's
No,
so
it's
bizarre.
whole cloth invention. It's whole cloth
Yeah.
invention. Yeah.
But
I mean,
this
luckily, of
one-
course, in 2019 we don't have this kind of problem.
Oh
anymore 'cause we're all
no,
far
of
more aligned.
course, absolutely, totally.
We don't have doofuses in the White House sort of demonising Muslim members of Congress or anything, so that's okay.
No, we don't
But,
have that at all. But the thing is, this particular connection, it actually gained legs.
Oh yeah.
Because I imagine even now there are people who, when they think of Columbine, they immediately think of Marilyn Manson, or vice versa.
Yeah, and I mean the news story I remember from the time was and this was, God, where did I get this from? It was some news source. It wasn't, but anyway, the story is a guy getting pulled over with a broken tail light on his way to a particular city, and the cops pull him over with the tail light, and they open the trunk, and it is full of guns. It's full of firearms. And when they ask the guy where he thinks he's going, he says he's going to kill the Antichrist.
Right,
You know,
okay.
and the city he's going to is the city that Marilyn Manson was playing.
Right.
You know, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
There's a sublime irony there, isn't it?
do you know what I mean? Like this,
Is
but it's also like this shit has real world.
Absolutely,
you make
yeah.
this shit up, it has real world consequences for the people you make shit up about. you
Well,
know?
of course it fucking does. I mean, like, you know, I mean, we have in this country the, which is still a thing, unfortunately, we have the whole media frenzy about child abuse. Now, don't get me wrong, child abuse is absolutely a significant problem and it needs to be addressed and dealt with, but the way the news media in this country utilise it to whip up fear of the other has had massive consequences for people's lives. You know, people have been assaulted, people have been murdered on the back of it, people have been arrested and their careers destroyed on the back of this furor.
I'm
Because
never going to get over the fact that as a direct result of the News of the World publishing a list of offenders, that the house of a paediatrician was burned down.
Right.
That for me is just the one where you just look at it and you're like, that's and it's not even like it's just inevitable that is what it's gonna have. That's
absolutely
that's cause and effect. That's the kind
more
of stupid
contemporaneously.
shit
More
that's gonna
contemporaneously, the murder of Joe Cox would not have happened were it not for the Daily Mail and the Sun. It just wouldn't have happened.
endless headlines about traitors and saboteurs and absolutely. That was enemies of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. What I love about Marilyn Manson, though, is that he sees this. Because of his very peculiar, I think you called it the best thing, which is his magpie intelligence, where he's flitting around and looking at stuff and making these interesting connections, and then wanting to subvert them, wanting to comment upon them. He is aware of this.
Yeah.
He didn't react. I mean, so many people in his position would have reacted in the wrong way and made it worse.
I think there was an incredible danger, and to be fair, I mean, it was psychologically, it was a very, very difficult time for him.
I can imagine it bloody was.
He did effectively disappear. He finished the Mechanical Animals tour, but he pretty much holed himself up in his Hollywood mansion and just waited it out. I mean, I remember at the time he was supposed to be appearing at there was this convention called Disinformation, and he was meant to be a guest of honor. In fact, they really wanted him there. And in between the Invite and Columbine happening, so what he ended up doing was sending a video, like he filmed himself at home, and that was, he literally was afraid to leave the house. At that point, and I think justifiably so.
Justifiably so. Because as I say, they very effectively created this dynamic where he was synonymous with the event for no reason. When he did come out of hiding and when he started doing interviews, I actually did see one of the interviews he did with, of all people, with Bill O'Reilly. And
yes, that's on YouTube still, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
It's such a good interview because he deals with Bill in such an effacing, disarming way. He doesn't engage him in conflict at all. No. He refuses the conflict, and he doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't get frustrated or flustered at all, and he just answers the guy's questions as honestly as he can. And what you can see happening as the interview goes on is, and he's dressed up. He is in his very sort of androgynous wonder. He looks great. When he does his thing, he looks amazing. Marilyn Manson does. He looks incredible. No one looks quite like him when he does it well. You can see Bill O'Reilly getting slightly charmed by the guy.
So great, isn't it? It's so great.
It's absolutely incredible to see it happening, because you would have thought that interview would be fireworks, wouldn't you? You'd think they'd maybe end up attacking one another or something.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen. And by the end, Bill's kind of talking to him in this very respectful, very sort of quiet manner, considered manner. It's
so funny. Because Billo must have been rolling his sleeves up, getting ready for a real humdinger. And I tell you what, it reminds me of as well. There's an interview that a quite famous, was it Geraldo? I can't remember his name, but some big American news anchor did an interview with Charles Manson in prison.
Oh my God! Yeah,
and it was the inspiration for Natural Born Killers. It was the inspiration for the scenes that Stone added to the Natural Born Killers script, where where Mickey's being interviewed by Robert Downey Jr.'s character, which is one of my favourite sequences in one of my favourite movies of all time.
It's emotional. It's distressing.
But the point about the Charles Manson interview and where it echoes with the Marilyn Manson interview with Bill O'Reilly is that there comes a point in that interview with Charlie Manson and the other guy, whoever he was, where you realise that Charles Manson is far smarter than the man who's interviewing him. Like, it's not even close. They're in different leagues. And he's so much smarter than the other guy that the other guy can't comprehend how much smart. And it's cat and mouse from then on. It's just...
what Manson starts to do in that interview is he starts to play with him. He starts to, really try to upset him, really try to distress, and, with everything he does, his body language, those weird noises he starts to make, It's a very distressing watch.
And although Marilyn Manson takes a different approach with Billo, you do get that same feeling. You get to about the 2 or 3 minute mark, or the 3 or 4 minute mark, and you're like, Jesus, this guy, you've got like 50 IQ points on Bill O'Reilly, haven't you?
Absolutely,
at least 50. It's just, it's absurd.
And he knows it. He clearly is aware of the fact, but he doesn't use it as a bludgeoning tool, which he could have done. It would have been very easy to do, but he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't do that. He kind of puts the guy at his ease.
But he's playing a different game. You see, Marilyn Manson, what he understands is that if he describes himself as the Antichrist superstar, 2 things happen. One is that every single God-fearing parent in the United States is immediately sent into paroxysms of terror, right? And will react accordingly. And what that also means is that every single child of every single God-fearing American parent is going to fall in love with him.
Yeah, suddenly they're going to know his name, aren't
That's
they?
the dynamic. That's how it works. That's
Yeah.
the whole point of teen rebellion, is to fucking rebel against your parents. He understood
Exactly,
that.
exactly.
And like, you listen to Portrait of an American Family, and the whole thing is filled with like these gags of like recorded bits from TV of just like, kill your mum and dad, kill your mum and dad,
yeah.
like, and it's a gag, man. It's a total joke.
Oh, absolutely.
He's just like, he's playing with that image, already. Although he hasn't worked it all out yet. Even on the debut album, you can hear that. You can hear that approach. You can hear that, from the opening line of the opening song, "I am the god of fuck." It's like, here we go. Like, I'm setting my stall out right here.
He knows what he's doing. Yeah. And he anticipates reaction beautifully. I mean, he knows how to market friction and tension.
Absolutely.
That's what he knows how to do. But to do it in such a way that, it does upset people, but it does it in such a way that it's actually an intellectual exercise. It's really quite clever, because he's also very aware that these tensions are things within American culture, they're things within US society and in wider culture as well.
Yeah.
So he's actually calling these things into question, and he's showing people, or he's calling people, rather than showing, he's actually calling people to question for themselves these things that they assume that are normal in their lives,
And that's the real power of it, and that's why he really was so feared, because of course that's the one thing you're really not allowed to do.
Well, he was talking to their children.
Culture. No, that's right. But
he was talking to their children, but he was one of their children. That's the thing. He's talking to their children in a way that they understand and that they respond to, with images that, okay, maybe they haven't seen or considered before, but they know them. I mean, the images and the conflicts of image that he creates are the stuff of genuine nightmares.
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit of a generational hypocrisy there, as there often is, because I mean, there was, the 70s produced Alice Cooper, the 70s produced Kiss. We'd seen some of this stuff, something like it before.
Oh yeah.
Manson took it to another level. I think. I mean, I think Alice is a criminally underrated artist to this day. I think Alice was a lot smarter than people realised as well, actually. And some of the stuff Alice, I mean. The thing about Alice is you have to contextualise it to when he started, and there really wasn't anyone else doing what he did. And
there wasn't anyone doing that very sort of theatrical, big, very, very dark and disturbing. I mean, you look at it now, obviously, and it seems rather tame. It actually comes off as rather camp to the present day eye. But because of that lack of context,
that's right. And it was genuinely, and I think Alice. I mean, obviously, Alice had his problems with substance abuse, but he knew what he was doing a lot of the time, and I think. Yeah. And some of that stuff is it's still classic. It still holds up. Kiss, I find far more disposable. Kiss are clearly just a kind of commercial. I mean, Kiss really are the crass, commercialised version of that, right? Kiss are just like the give me all your money version of that.
The Plastic Fantastic version. Well, hence you get like Kiss and Scooby-Doo and
exactly.
Kiss comics and whatnot.
Kiss comics, Kiss breakfast cereal, Kiss coffins. I mean, the whole Kiss
video
games,
the whole thing, the whole lot. Yeah,
because it's like, where's the money? Follow the money. But I think that what I like about Manson is, I think what Manson understood was you can use all those shock tactics to get people to the door, but if you're going to get them through it, there needs to be something of substance when they land.
Yeah.
And I think he does understand that as an artist. And that's, he did, I mean, for my money anyway, especially those early albums, he really did deliver on that.
Well, there are genuine ideas in his music. There are genuine ideas and tensions that he wants to explore, and he wants you to explore as well. I mean, he's not the kind of artist who will explain or exposit. If you listen to his songs, they don't work like that. He's not actually telling you about the themes and ideas. What he's actually doing is providing you with these strange collisions of image and of concept that then excite thought. They excite. Sometimes it's shocking. Sometimes you sort of like feel all the hackles go up on the back of your neck because it's shunted you into a frame of mind or a context that you maybe hadn't considered before or didn't necessarily understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did that. You reminded me of one of the big things in the fandom at the time, which was there were two things. One was there were a few very insistent voices that were desperate to get him to explain in more detail, to get him to be more explicit about. I remember especially when Hollywood came out, there was someone who was obsessed with the references to the cross as meat in the shape of a T, and the
Yeah.
idea that was about magic mushrooms and about the whole kind of Gnostic version of Christianity that holds about hallucinogens being a way to a higher kind of consciousness, blah, blah,
State
blah,
of
blah.
consciousness and all of that stuff. Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sure Manson will have been aware of that reference. I think when he used the phrase "meat in the shape of a T," he knew exactly what he meant by that. But I also don't think he had any interest at all in launching a new alchemic cult around magic mushroom use. He just
No, I mean, this is something I was thinking about earlier when I was listening to Mechanical Animals.
Right.
In particular, I was listening to The Dope Show and I Don't Like the Drugs, which is one of my favorites. I absolutely love that, and I love the imagery in the video too. As an aside, he looks great in it. He looks amazing in it. So striking, you know.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. One of the things he isn't. I don't think he's not as activist as people tend to assume.
No.
He is certainly like the older generation, the people who are like shocked by him. I don't think they get it right in that regard. I don't think he is as activist as certain other artists are, or certain other groups. Like I was contrasting him to the likes of, say, the Gorillaz at the early 2000s when they launched Demon Days, for example, which is a direct assault on what's happening in the UK.
Sure.
At the time, it's like it's such an activist album. It wants you to get up and storm Parliament. Basically, that album really wants you to take up arms. It's a total activist album. Manson doesn't do that. Manson comments. You know, he's sort of sitting back in a way and commenting on what is happening in culture.
Yeah, and I think the root of that for me with Manson, and it took me a while to kind of really get my head around this, but the reason for that is that I think Manson himself is profoundly ambivalent about the culture. We always focus, I think people always focus on the Manson part of his name. Certainly the tabloid press do. A lot of the fans, I think, often do as well. But half of it's Marilyn. You know, Marilyn Monroe, and what was she as a figure, and you know, there's stuff like, I think what people miss about a song like "The Beautiful People" as an example is like, there is a desperate longing in that song.
Oh, absolutely.
To be a part of the thing that he's mocking. You know?
Yeah, well, that's true in almost all of his songs. You know, a lot of his songs have drug imagery and reference in it, for example. Sometimes it's literal, sometimes it's metaphor. But when he's actually talking about the culture of drugs, like in The Dope Show or in I Don't Like the Drugs, he is so powerfully ambivalent about the experience of drugs and the culture of them and what they're used for on a political and cultural level. You know, he celebrates the hallucinogenic quality of them, certainly, and the transgressive element of them, but at the same time, he really bemoans the fact that they make you lethargic and they make you disconnected from culture and they make you unactive. That's throughout. That element is throughout his music. It's a sign of his intelligence, I think, the fact that he does regard most things ambiguously.
But I also think as well, with the man who's often accused of kind of, not accused of, but a man who, you know, clearly, for whom theatricality is deeply important, you know, for whom playing a part is integral to what he's doing. I actually do think there's something sincere at the core of that. I really do. I think he genuinely, I mean, he bought a house in Hollywood. He bought a house in the Hollywood Hills. He's from Florida. He didn't, you know, he wanted to be in California. He wanted to be in Hollywood. It mattered to him. It matters to him. He wanted to be a cultural figure. As much as his work is commenting on the culture, often in really like acidic, you know, violent, angry ways, he is also obsessed with being a celebrity, with being part of the culture, with being a cultural figure. And I love that, because that tension is what produces, I think, so much of the greatness of his work, and it's the thing that's kind of, I think, often overlooked by fans, really.
Yes, because I imagine it's because of the type of fan base that he is talking directly to, who are generally the disaffected. So they are going to be people who are naturally counterposed to the culture itself. But yes, there is this simultaneous celebration and condemnation of what he talks about, of what he refers to. And that complexity is part of his appeal for me.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway, it's the fact that he's not talking down to you. You know, he's not giving you an easy answer. He's not giving you an out, basically, because we all operate under that tension. You know, in every geeky, disaffected kid, there's also the kid that kind of wants to belong. There's the kid that kind of wants to be part of the culture in some particular way.
And it's interesting. I mean, different bands handle that in different ways. I mean, the one I always think of in relation to that is Slipknot, where you feel that they've really decided to build a community around disaffection, and that's really what it feels like when you go to a Slipknot show, especially now, because they're really well established, and there really is a feeling of like, you know, you're amongst just fellow travelers, right? You look at each other and you're like, so we were all that kid, right? We were all the lonely kid, we were all the bullied kid, we were all the kind of, you know, that source of rage, and you build your own community. But what I find more interesting with Manson is he's still got that. He's really ambivalent about his outsider status. You know, whereas Slipknot have built an identity around it. That's what they are. We are the outsiders.
Yes,
I mean, their new album's called "We Are Not Your Kind." It's literally like, this is the tribe. You know, we're creating something new.
It's the tribe of the tribeless, isn't it?
Right.
You know?
Whereas Manson kind of I think rejects kind of the notion of tribe. Like, he just can't see himself as part of anything,
and thereby the very notion of identity. I mean, I think Manson, having heard him interviewed and actually speak about it in very kind of plain terms outside of his music, I do think that Manson finds the very notion of identity to be limiting. I think he finds it to be a trap, something that we become dependent on, and then something that's used to lead us by the nose, essentially, which is why he seems to be in constant conflict with himself, you know, in terms of his own image, the way he looks, the way he markets himself, and within the music itself and within the videos. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about earlier is this is going to be quite a complex thing to unpick, because you can't talk about Marilyn Manson as a phenomena by just talking about the music. It doesn't work.
Not even remotely, because he became what he wanted to. He became a cultural phenomenon. He absolutely was.
A sort of pan-cultural, you know, he's lots of different things all at once. So the music is great. I do actually really enjoy Marilyn's music in all of its. I mean, I know people who would turn their noses up at the very notion of calling it music, you know, because it is by its very nature anti-music. It's kind of discordant and it's kind of ugly and it's kind of aggressive and unpleasant, but that's the point, isn't it? That's entirely the point.
That's right.
But I think it works better when you listen to it with the videos and you have the entire theatrical experience around it. There's an aesthetic quality to it that works beautifully. I mean, it just seems to. He creates worlds in his videos and he creates characters that draw me in. I want to know more about them. They're these horrible, hallucinatory, schizophrenic, vile places to exist. But I want to know more about them. I want to know more about those worlds. They're kind of utopias of freaks.
Yeah, and I have to say that extends to the live show as well. I think that the Hollywood tour in particular. I mean, I would say that because it's the one I caught. Well, no,
of course.
I did see him on the Mechanical Animals tour. It was part of a festival bill, and it was he was great. It was a fantastic performance. But it wasn't his day. It wasn't his show in that sense. And it was open air during the day, and that's just not really. That's not the preferred environment.
Not for Marilyn Manson, no. Because I imagine his shows would be best when they are big, when there's lots of stuff going on. You know, Kate Bush came out of retirement a year back, and she did this amazing stage performance. This like just out of this world stage performance. I imagine Manson would be great if he had that kind of budget and that kind of venue behind him. In fact, I mean, I love both Bush and Manson, and I would love to see them collaborate.
That would be quite something.
Wouldn't that be something? Eh?
It's not impossible. You know, Manson worked with. You know, he did a music video with Eminem at one point.
I know.
Peaches he was involved with at one point. I'm convinced. if he didn't collaborate with Lady Gaga, then I hallucinated it. But I'm sure there was a collaboration, or maybe I just
those
think
two,
of that
they're so similar.
they feel like peas in a pod. Yeah, exactly.
Those two, I could definitely see collaborating. I mean, you could see the influence. I mean,
Yes.
because Lady Gaga is such a later phenomena, you can actually see the influence of Manson in her. You know?
No, absolutely. And you feel that would be. I mean, it would be such a great collaboration, wouldn't it?
Oh, it'd be great fun. Yeah, and they would look good. You know, together they would work. You know.
But no, you're right. Manson, I mean, the shows that I remember the most vividly are from I caught him twice on the Hollywood tour in the UK. So I saw him at Manchester and in London. And those shows were just fantastic. They were really, because there's so much he did. There was, at one point he had, he was fitted with what looked like a dress, you know, a skirt around his waist. But then as he sang the song, and this was Crucifixion in Space, he was lifted, and he just kept going up and up and up and up and up, and the dress just unfolded and unfolded and unfolded below him, and it looked like he was standing on a podium. I mean, he was actually on a flight suit, I think. But it looked like he was on a podium, and he just ascended as the song played, you know, up to and it was a fucking high, you know, like
amazing,
20 or 30 feet. And that was it. It wasn't, you know, but the image was so striking of him, you know, right up in the rafters with this huge, you know, dress skirt thing hanging down right to the ground, concealing whatever it was that was putting him up there. You know? And then he had the stilts, which he's quite famous for, the kind of double stilts, so the feet and the thing. And that was, you know, when he did Tourniquet, did that.
Of course.
And then there were other moments like the Nobodies where he would hang over the front of the stage, and he had a handheld searchlight, and he would just run it over the crowd as he was singing the lines of the song.
Nobodies, of course, that is perfect. That works so well. He's very clever, actually. As a man, he's very clever, because I think what he noted very early on is that he's not the kind of guy who, if he went into like a singing talent competition or whatever, he wouldn't probably get that far. He's not like a technical singer, you know. He's not the kind of person who you can hear their voice and hear them sing a traditional ballad or song and you'd think, oh, that's amazing, it's so powerful, it's so technical, it's so beautiful. He's not that kind of guy. So he knows that he needed to do something else, that he needed to be this theatrical creature that had the visuals and he had to be distinct with his voice. If he couldn't be like technically apt, he could be distinct, you know, which he is.
And you make an excellent point there, and that's a really important aside. This is exactly why the X Factor and The Voice are total
rubbish.
They would never discover something like this guy in a million fucking years. So what is the point of that?
Do you know what I always think? I always think of David Bowie. Now, David Bowie is not a technically brilliant singer.
No, he wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. He wouldn't have got through round one of Britain's Got Talent, would he? But
he's got that thing. He's
David fucking Bowie.
He's David fucking Bowie. He's got passion. He's got talent. He's got inspiration. He's got other things going on, as Marilyn Manson does. You know, I mean, I know my friend Ray is actually a performance artist, singer-songwriter. He composes. He's just a musician to his core, basically. Sure. He's the kind of guy. I've seen him do it. I've seen him pick up instruments and he could just play them. He's never picked them up before. He could just play them. And I like to poke him about things like the Voice and the X Factor, because I can tell you when he gets going. When he gets going, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
But you're right, though. The point about Marilyn Manson is, but what I think goes underappreciated by a lot of people is, I mean, you're absolutely right. He had to figure out how to use what he's got.
Yeah.
But he is fucking amazing with what he's got.
Mm-hmm.
The tone of his voice is
the shrieking is great,
incredible. But not just the shriek. I mean, when you listen. Actually, the Nobodies is a really good example. Listen to the cracked quality of his voice on the verses. It is absolutely exquisite. It is crushed glass.
Mm-hmm.
It is fucking amazing. And then when he gets to those choruses, he just bellows.
Belts,
and it just goes. And it's this raw-throated, like bloody shriek of pain, you know. And it's fucking. And the thing is, he can do that 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
And he doesn't blow his voice out. So he's clearly, there's an awful lot of technique underneath the hood.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just that it's the kind of voice that isn't prescribed. That's the thing, isn't it?
Exactly
It's not
it.
prescribed.
Yeah, exactly
it's not what people assume to be a good singer, because it's not what's established in popular culture as a good singer. But it's emotive. That's the point. And okay, it's making you feel emotions that are negative, but that's the point.
Yeah. But it's making you feel, and that's what we're going for here. And in a way that a million, bland X Factor winners with perfect pitch are just never going to move me in any way. I mean,
the X Factor and their product is what he's talking about in the Dope Show. It's exactly what he's talking about. It's the stuff that dulls your senses. It's the stuff that you are told you should like, but which actually just consoles you and comforts you because it's familiar and it's unchallenging.
Yeah.
It poisons your mind, basically. It poisons your inspirations. Whereas Manson is jagged. Manson is, as you said, he's crushed glass.
Yeah.
And there is a certain beauty to that. His music is expressing something that music generally doesn't, which is pain, it's despair, it's ennui, it's addiction, it's obsession. It's the darker elements of emotional experience.
Oh, I adore his voice. I absolutely do. I was thinking about, I was listening to it today, so it's on my mind, but, his vocal performance on tracks like, The Man That You Fear, it's just, oh, man. Because it's really strong. It's incredibly strong, but there is a fragility too. There's a vulnerability. He talks in his autobiography about the recording of that song and how he was really, he was really, really bottoming out in the studio when it happened. And there's actually a lovely anecdote where he talks about, he got to the end of a line, he sang a line, he took a hit of coke, he didn't even feel it. He sang another line and he actually started crying.
Right.
And the track stops and Trent Reznor, the producer, comes in over the tunnel. He's like, can we cut out the theatrics and just get on with the recording?
Yeah, because obviously,
fucking sympathy from Trent.
Obviously, Reznor. He's been around for I bet he's seen this a million times.
Even at that point,
he's
in his
done
career,
it a million times.
Yeah. But it's really funny how, in the book, Manson's all aggrieved at this was my big emotional moment, and Trent was just cut out the theatrics and just sing the fucking song.
The nuts and bolts. Brilliant.
And it's a good bit of writing actually, because you see it from Manson's side, but you can also kind of read it from Trent's side between the lines. You're like, actually, no, studio time's expensive.
Yeah, cut it out and get on with it. Yeah.
How many months have you been recording Antichrist Superstar at this point? Get it out the fucking door. But it's very funny. But he does have that. He does have that kind of vulnerability to his voice that is really, as well as the anger, as well as the fury. And it's the fact that he still sounds that good. I was listening to, I think The Pale Emperor is the name of the album.
Yeah, the new one, yeah.
One of his, it's fairly recent, or I can't remember, maybe it was the one before that. But a recent recording for you've seen John Wick.
Certainly do.
Right, so the Marilyn Manson song in John Wick, We're Killing Strangers, his voice is still
still pretty good, isn't it? It's still
rock solid, man, and it's still got that quality. It's still got that crushed glass kind of growl to it. But he must have a hell of a regimen to still be in that kind of shape.
to be able to do it, because it is the kind of expression that is kind of violent. It's kind of aggressive. I imagine it rips his throat to bits. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it does, doesn't it? But that's why I say I think there's a lot more technique going on under the hood than a lot of people maybe realise. He must. And the other thing is, you can hear it when you listen to Portrait of an American Family. It's not there. The voice is not yet there. The tone is not yet there.
He hasn't quite developed yet. Yeah.
It really is a quantum leap between that album and Antichrist. You can hear something very different. Now, some of that is obviously going to be the production.
Yep.
Because Trent Reznor's like a world-class record producer.
Of course.
And he's, it's something you can't. It's a really important thing about Antichrist Superstar. You can't talk about the success of that album without talking about the fact that it was a Trent Reznor production. Because,
of course. His name alone would have carried it, wouldn't it? At that point. The fact that he was attached to it would have carried it.
But he also poured a lot into it, and you can hear that. You can hear that. Antichrist doesn't sound like any other Marilyn Manson record. And it's because Trent Reznor was at the helm, and he was, and it was a brilliant marriage of talents. Because he brought something to Manson's sound that allowed Manson to develop his vision in a way that created this absolutely fucking amazing piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
But still, but even with all that, even taking all that away, something happened to the way Manson sound, learned to sing between
Yeah.
those two records. Something changed in his approach to vocals, and whatever it was, he stuck with it since. And you can hear that improved version of Manson's voice carries on from that point, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, did it take you, when you first came across Manson, did it take you a while to get it? Did it take you a while to sort of understand what he was doing?
I fucking hated it. I
Yeah.
hated it. I absolutely hated it. I heard beautiful people. Someone played it to me, and I was like, "That's just fucking
It's just
horrible.
shrieking. It's just, yeah, I had
It's
exactly the same
sludgy
reaction.
fucking noise. I mean,
Yeah.
I liked rock, I liked metal, but I liked Metallica. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I liked Guns N' Roses. I liked,
Yeah.
I did not like this. I did not. And the guy who got me into it, that I was talking about earlier, Rob, the guy who I ended up buying the album for, and he bought it for me. He was persistent. He knew there was something going on there,
Yeah.
and he bought the album he bought Antichrist very early on. And he played it relentlessly, and it just seeped in. And it's a funny thing, because I did write about Antichrist for Ginger Nuts, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I cannot remember now. I cannot put my finger on where the flip occurred.
I was going to say, what was there like a particular thing that just made it go, I get it now?
I think it was listening to the album. I think that, although now I think The Beautiful People is actually a legitimately brilliant single, I think that I needed the scale of the album to really understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And I think once I made the connection that this was actually an album artist in the same way that Pink Floyd were album artists,
Yes, yeah.
and I could really click with that, that's when I started to, because I have an instinctive appreciation for that kind of music, because as we've discussed before, Floyd was such a, that's earliest memories music is Floyd.
Yes,
so,
yeah,
so
likewise.
anything that emulates that form is going to get my attention,
And there is, I mean, once again, the DNA of Floyd is in Manson. Hugely.
Well, especially The Wall. I mean,
Yeah.
you could make an argument that every Marilyn Manson album is a reiteration of The Wall.
Yeah.
It's certainly the big three,
And certainly thematically alone,
Yes.
thematically it's the same protest, isn't it?
And
it's coming up again.
And he did it in the stage show. I mean, in Antichrist Superstar, he had a podium on that tour. He had a podium that he'd deliver these, sermons from, and when he'd do the song Antichrist Superstar, he'd do it from a podium. But even in the Hollywood tour, he had the same thing. He had a podium with like a crucifix made out of guns on the front, and gold and red.
Again, so he's being so provocative, isn't he?
Oh yeah. And
He's being so
he had a
provocative.
suit and tie on for that. His hair like over in the Hitler flick with his hair.
Yeah.
And he had, the microphone was attached to the podium, and he was singing into the microphone, leaning over the podium, waving his fist at the audience, all that kind of stuff. I mean, he knew exactly what he was fucking doing.
Of course he does. He's so conscious of what he's up to. Yeah.
But I mean, at
Totally.
that point, he's leading us in a chant about God's guns and government, right? I mean, like he's, it's all on the label, man. It's all up front. It's part of the slogan.
For me, it was, I mean, it's a weird thing, but it was Columbine.
Okay.
It was Columbine.
Yeah,
I knew of him before that, but I didn't respond in any particular way. I found it odd. I didn't quite gravitate towards it naturally, But then it started. I started to see his name everywhere because of the Columbine thing, and I started to see these news broadcasts where they were talking about him in context with Columbine, and I remember being fascinated by what I couldn't get that tension out of my head. Why do they keep talking about him? Because what I kept thinking is I can't see the connection. I can't see why they're talking about him in connection with this, and yet I haven't heard the names of the actual killers. I don't understand. I remember being confused by it, and then actively seeking out the music, actively seeking it out. And I remember listening to it, and my mum hearing it, and sort of being like, "What the?" I mean, she didn't care about the Columbine thing. She sure thought that was bullshit too, but. She was like, "What the hell is that?" Because what on earth is that? That's like music from hell. Is that?
Yeah.
and that's how it started to cultivate. Really, I started to like listen to the music because it was like trying to unpick a puzzle. It's like, so what about this leads to this? Nothing, you know. It's something else entirely, and that's where it started, and that's where I started to get a taste for both the music and the man and the act and the theatre performances, the
Sure.
videos and whatnot. And the videos in particular I really enjoy. I really enjoy them. I mean, yeah, there is a tendency for them to get a bit self-parodic after a while, you know, because the imagery recurs quite a lot, and you have to obviously keep going, because once you've established that, right, I'm going to try and shock you with this, you've got to keep upping the ante, don't you? You've got to keep doing something different. You've got to keep going with it. But that's where it began, and it kind of has sustained. I will still go and watch the videos occasionally, and I've actually, coming to re-listen to the music and re-watch the videos for this podcast, I've actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. It was a really interesting reconnection because, I mean, the thing is, my fandom at a certain point got very intense indeed. I mean, I had that whole, as I say, it was the first online community I was a part of. That's a big deal.
It's a big deal because it's a frontier thing, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
actually
absolutely.
bringing you into this new environment, you know?
Yeah. And I did actually get to chat with the man at one point on his board as well. One of the things he'd do, he's such a prick. So one of the things he'd do is he'd sometimes bowl up at like literally 4 a.m. his time, so like 2 o'clock in the afternoon UK time, whatever.
Yeah.
And he'd just be like, he'd just start a thread, and he had his avatar. You knew it was him because it wasn't even a name. It was just the Mercury symbol was his avatar.
Yeah. So you
in the
knew
place
who
of
it
the name.
was, yeah.
And he'd say, I'm going to be here for 30 minutes, ask your questions, and then all this would disappear, and he'd delete the threads after he'd redone them. And I guess he was rolling in after a party or post-production for the album or whatever the hell it was. But I caught one of them. And I did get to kind of ask questions, and everyone. I mean, obviously, the second it happens, everybody piles in.
Of course. So you actually got to interact a little bit, yeah?
But that was the thing. That was the point, right? And that was the thing. And that was where it felt like, and he felt to me like to be one of the first artists that really understood that you could do that kind of thing. That the internet would allow that direct one-to-one contact with fans.
Sort of break down the traditional barriers.
Yeah. And he was really excited about that at the time. I think, especially
he
in a way,
would be,
especially post. Yeah, but I think especially post Columbine because it was a safe way to do it.
Of course, I never thought of that. But yeah.
So I think he found it pretty appealing, but it was a hell of a moment. I mean, just seeing that icon appear and then seeing that happen. But yeah, the fandom was really intense for me, and I was nervous because after that, after it being such a formative thing for me, not just for the music, but for all the detritus surrounding it, and having basically not listened to it for about a decade.
Yeah.
There was a kind of like,
is it so much of its time that it's lost its?
That was the thing. I wasn't worried about the quality as such because I knew it was good. I mean, I knew anything
at a technical level,
Well, anything that had gotten me past my initial antipathy almost had to be good because my initial antipathy was so strong. You know what? I've realised I thought it was stupid.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was dumb. I thought the name was dumb.
I can see that.
Was a dumb
I can see
song.
that. I think I may have had a similar, not as strong as you, but I think I may have had a similar reaction. I think what I may have thought when I first saw like one of the videos or whatnot is it's trying too hard. It's too much. It doesn't do it for me because it feels forced. It feels false or whatever. And that's because I just didn't understand. That's because I just hadn't immersed myself in sort of the culture he was trying to create and realized that actually, no, he's actually really earnest in this stuff. He actually is interested in this. And the reason the images occur is because he likes them. He's interested. He wants to, he's actually fascinated by them.
And the huge irony of that is, of course, I became one of the worst kind of fans who were
Oh, no.
endlessly banging on to everyone about how you don't get it, man.
Oh,
It's really
no.
smart.
Really?
It's really deep. Oh god, it was terrible.
Oh, no.
Well, there's no one has the zeal of the convert. Right?
Of
That's
course,
the
you're a
ultimate.
convert, weren't you? Oh, dear.
Yeah, I was in a nightmare. So it really was like there was this incredible kind of nervousness about going back and be like, if this sucks, I'm going to be really fucking embarrassed.
Yeah, well, actually, I wasn't that bothered about that. I mean, maybe because I wasn't as like big a fan as you were. It wasn't like as formative for me. But I was well prepared to say actually I didn't like it I don't like it anymore, or
Sure.
it doesn't chime for me anymore. But actually it really did. It is of its era. It is very sort of mid 1990s, early 2000s. It is expressing something very specific about those eras, and it's talking to the youth culture of that era. But I can remember being the youth culture of that era, so it's absolutely fine. And not only that, but the things he is bringing up are still entirely relevant. It's kind of depressing in many respects. We actually haven't moved on at all.
Oh, it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse,
The American situation has gotten worse. I mean, that's the thing actually for me that was really kind of quite disturbing, listening especially to Hollywood with the kind of gods, guns and government thing. And it's worth rehashing. Hollywood as an album is a response to Columbine.
Yeah.
It's a response to Columbine, and it's a response to the fallout from Columbine. The Nobodies is about the shooters, and there's other songs on there that are very clearly about the response to what happened.
Yeah.
And it's a very kind of it's a very defiant album. It's a very angry album. It's a wounded album. But this is a guy it is a guy just looking in the mirror and just refusing to die. Just like, no, fuck you. This is what I do. This is who I am, and I'm not going to stop for anyone, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But hearing the kind of the gods, guns and government speech and the chanting over the sounds of a rallying crowd, and it's like, fuck.
Just last week, eh?
Yeah, exactly. It's like
just last week.
And all it really does is forcibly remind you that this incurable sickness within the psyche of the American Republican Party it's not new. It is not.
I think it's worse than that. And I think it's something that Marilyn Manson does acknowledge. I think it's human. I think it's a fault of our history. It's a fault of our biology, perhaps. It's all intermingled together, and it makes me think, like Manson seems to do, there needs to be some new zeitgeist. There needs to be something beyond the systems and the cycles that we've established, and whether that's, I don't know, something technological, like a kind of transhumanism that removes us from these weaknesses, these limitations, or something cultural, something, a renaissance, a revolution. We need people like Manson. Now, it can't be Manson anymore. Unfortunately, it can't be, because he's kind of too old now. He can't really, and also he's established. He's done his thing, as it were. But we need people like him in every field, it seems to me, who are doing the same thing.
It's an interesting point. I don't know. I mean, yes, I don't know how you do Grandpappy Manson. I'm not sure how that works.
No, I don't think you can.
I think about it. I mean, Alice basically did it by becoming his own tribute act, which is fine.
It's fine, but it's not.
That sounds like a.
It sounds like a condemnation, but
I don't mean that unkindly, because it's still. Hey, you know what? You want to go see Alice Cooper do a show? He will put on a show.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
He will play the hits, and you will have a good time. I did. I went and saw him, 4 or 5 years ago, and it was great. It was, it was longer than that. But, it was really good. Great show. Played every single hit, and it was a good show. And I don't need to go again. But how you stay relevant? I mean, I always feel that's where the kind of the old school rock and rollers and the country boys have an edge, because the thing is, like with country music, the older you get, the better you get. The more you grow into the character. Blues is the same. Rock and roll, you can get away with it if you're like a Springsteen type, and the music you're playing is old as dirt already.
You can just about get away with it,
Yeah, but I think it's for the punks, and for the goths, it's a bit
It's a youth
tougher.
movement. It's a youth movement. Sorry.
It's
What
a bit
happens is
tougher.
they become old, and because they have some success, they become establishment, largely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They betray themselves, they betray their ideals. That's what happened with the punks, it's what happened with the hippies, it's what happened with the vast majority of these movements, that even a lot of the ravers, which again, the DNA of the rave culture is so clear in Manson, even them, you know? Um,
Yeah, I mean, you get the impression that MDMA is probably Marilyn Manson's least favorite drug, don't you? You get the impression he's kind of ideologically opposed to ecstasy.
yeah, and not only that, he's probably just bored of it, It just doesn't probably do a great deal for him.
He's definitely a cocaine and amphetamines kind of guy. Isn't
Yeah,
he?
and the hallucinogens, I imagine.
Yes,
I imagine he
yes,
rather likes the hallucinogens.
Well, he was in a massive. He was in a massive absinthe phase throughout Hollywood.
I can
was-
imagine. Yeah.
That was like every interview. There was like a bottle of absinthe
Yes,
on the table. I mean,
of
it was absolutely ridiculous.
Of course. But no, it is difficult. I mean, it's staying relevant, but also not becoming a parody of yourself, or
Yep.
not becoming the establishment that you actually rail against. That's
Yep.
the problem.
Yep.
And I think part of that is inevitable. It does happen. You just can't help it, especially if you're successful.
It's difficult. I mean, and it's it's partly a function of aging. It becomes harder to do new things. It becomes
Yep.
harder to learn. I mean, it just does. The brain, the brain's capacity to learn and capacity to learn quickly just deteriorates
Yeah.
as we get older. That's a fact of biology. That's not. And you can do things to. You can do things to exercise, if you like, to kind of build up a tolerance to that, or resistance to that, rather, and to try and find a way to manage it as best you can. But I'm afraid, decline is
It's kind of inevitable,
Decline and decay are built into the model. I'm
Yep,
afraid.
they certainly are.
It's all part of the long, slow slide to the inevitable destination. And that's if you're lucky. It's long and slow, otherwise it could be a lot quicker. So yeah, it's a fucker, and it's a real it's difficult. I mean, as I say, I think The Pale Emperor is a really fucking good album. I think it really is. There's some really exciting stuff, and I remember listening to that and thinking, like, being really happy.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so he has still, on occasion at least, he has still got it. That's good. I feel good about that. I feel glad that Marilyn Manson is still in the world and still pissed off about it.
Yeah, there is a but, though, isn't there?
Well, yeah, because it's not ever going to be.
It's never going to be the phenomena it was. It's never going to have the power that it was. It's never going to have the energizing quality that it once had, because the culture from which he arose, that he's commenting on, is different now. It's transformed to a certain degree, and the children he was talking to, they're not children anymore.
Yeah.
And the children that do exist now, he's kind of passé for.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, just on a more elemental level, like, you can only be shocked by the name Marilyn Manson the first time you
Exactly.
hear it.
And then it becomes part of culture, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It becomes part of culture, so...
Exactly. And I think I think that's the thing. I think the way you do it is to lean into it. I think what you do is embrace your elder statesman status, right?
Yes.
And you use that to, I don't know how, right? But that's what you do. You just lean into it.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's tricky.
But it is tricky. But it's even creatively, it was tricky for him because, of course, after the trilogy, after the amazing success of those three albums, he did the Golden Age of Grotesque, and the Golden Age of Grotesque is the sound of a man desperately flailing around trying to figure out what the hell you do next. I mean, it just visibly is, and it's like explicit. The first song on the album is called "This Is the New Shit," and the whole lyric is just like everything's been said before, nothing left to say anymore. It's the opening line of the song. It's like, and I have to admire the fact that he just had the balls to
actually say
make an album out of that. That's really, that's very cool. That's very admirable in a lot of ways.
Yeah, not pretend that actually, I'm doing something so new and so revolutionary. Well, actually, I've done that, and I don't know,
And on the other, but then on the flip side, unfortunately, Golden Age of Grotesque, the quality drops off quite markedly,
sharply,
especially on side 2. It's not.
Yeah.
There wasn't a full album worth of ideas.
Yeah, it's clearly
in whatever it was he was mining for that.
And that happens to them
record.
all, doesn't it? I mean, it happened, to Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails. It happened to them, it really did. I got that one for Ginger Nuts, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I got that album.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not terrible.
No,
It's
no,
not
no.
terrible by any stretch of the imagination. But then you had like in the previously you had the Faithless, and it's like fucking hell. I had
Yeah.
to follow that with this. Great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's right. And I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? You get to that point where, I mean, I think Reznor's still capable of putting out a fantastic album.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he will or not, but I believe him to be capable of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a lot of time for Year Zero. I think that was a very noble experiment, and it had some really good moments on it. But that's what I'm saying. It was a noble experiment. It had good moments, you know. Whereas you put on the Fragile or the Downward Spiral,
Yeah.
and you're just pinned to the fucking
The
floor.
Fragile.
You're just
fucking hell.
Yeah.
Jesus.
just nails you to the wall. Doesn't
Fragile
it?
just. Yeah, it does it, doesn't it? The Fragile
it does.
just completely, yeah,
Yeah.
desolates you.
And it's, I mean, the phrase I've heard, and this is Elizabeth Sandifer, who's a Doctor Who commentator, but she's written about a ton of stuff. She's one of my favourite pop culture sort of writers at this point. And she describes it, the phrase I've heard her use is a band's imperial phase.
Imperial phase, I like that.
Yeah. And it really works because you instinctively understand what she means when she says it. And immediately with every artist you've got in your collection, you think of what are the albums from their imperial phase. You know what she's talking about. And what we know about the imperial phase is it happens somewhere between the first and third album.
Yeah.
It lasts somewhere between the fifth to the seventh if they really push it.
Yeah.
And then it ends.
Then it's done. Yeah. Then it's done.
Whatever they do afterwards, the artist, they never get that imperial phase back.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just something I imagine if you're in this area, you have to just acknowledge it. You just have to like, okay.
But don't you think it's a weird thing as applies to music and not necessarily so much other genres?
Yeah, it is. It is unusual, isn't it? I mean,
well, unless it does.
Unless it does, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it? I don't think it's as strict and fast, say, for literature, for example. No, I don't think it's as strict and fast because you've got, say, I mean, as a very relevant example, you've got Barker, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, Barker had his, I suppose, what you'd call the imperial phase, but it was very long.
Yes,
it was lots. It was like there are at least about 12 books that were all hits.
A decade and change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think King's probably the same.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think you could say King had an imperial phase, and you can say it came to an end. And he has made some amazing work since that imperial phase. But it's something about the consistency as well as the peak, you know?
Yeah. It's also about newness as well, isn't it? It's just about the fact that, the culture is right for you at that point and that it accepts you and that you change it somehow by plunging into it. You do something that resonates within it, whether you consciously or otherwise, you do something that chimes with it and changes it. You can't manufacture that and you can't keep doing it. There comes a point where the high watermark is reached and then it recedes, you know?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, as much as I adore Bowie's output and as much as I can look at, there isn't a decade Bowie didn't put out some album that's absolutely gobsmackingly amazing.
Bowie's unusual, I would say. Bowie is unusual because he not everything he produced was amazing, but he consistently produced amazing work.
Yeah.
And actually, the stuff he produced that was produced posthumously, Black Star. Black Star's fucking amazing.
And I've got a lot of time for The Next Day. I think The Next Day is actually a really, really stunning piece of work. Kind of even more so in context when you realise it's actually part of The Long Goodbye. It is actually the first of what turned out to be two final letters.
Well, albums about the experience of dying.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
But it's called The Next Day. I mean, motherfucker, it's so good. It's so good. But the thing is that even with an artist like Bowie, there comes a point where he flips from every single album this man puts out as essential to this man is still capable of putting out essential art, right?
Let's see if it's any good.
That's a flip, and it's like you'll listen to the track and you'll make a determination, and if it sounds good, you'll buy it, and you'll you might get your mind blown, but you're not going to buy everything with his name on anymore. Because it ain't quite there anymore. So I don't know. Yeah, the Imperial phase. It's really interesting.
I like it,
and I think that for me, listening back to those three albums, it was really what it reminds me of is I felt for a little while there. I mean, however, for whatever much this means, it's a very subjective thing to think. I felt like I was part of that imperial
Yeah.
phase, by which I just purely mean that I was paying attention
Yeah,
when it
you
was happening.
identified with it. You were
Yeah.
there, yeah?
And I had like I remember when the singles came out, the Disposable Teens single and
Yeah.
the fights. Oh, the fight song!
The fight song, I was
Still
listening
one
to
of
that
my
earlier.
all-time favorite
Uh-huh.
singles, the fight song. And the video's really fun, but I just love that because that is a proper that is absolutely an anthem. That is
Yeah.
absolutely a get back up off the fucking
Oh,
mat
that is
anthem.
the attacking your parents song, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
That's
Yeah.
the song that's like,
Yeah.
fuck previous generations and
Yeah.
fuck the world they've created and make your own, alright? Even if you
Yeah.
have to burn it down, if you have to tear everything down, do it.
But it is also very much fuck every one of your peers that decides they want to buy into the status quo too.
Yeah.
I mean, it very much is just like just
Yeah.
burn it all down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
But it's
the fuck
also
conformity song, isn't it? It's
yeah,
the railing against conformity.
absolutely. But it's also what I love about it is through all of that anger and negativity, it becomes a positive affirmation when you get to that point where the chorus is just chanting fight, fight,
Yeah.
fight. It's an injunction. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
It's an
it's a
instruction.
call. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a call to arms, and I love that. I absolutely love that. And buying those singles as they came out and getting the B sides, man, the cover of because he had this at that point. Manson was absolutely obsessed with the Beatles' White Album, shock horror, the Rolling Stones' Let It Bleed, and the Doors was the other band he was really into at the
But
time.
again, not a surprise.
Not really a surprise, no. And he did. So the cover of 5 into 1 was one of the B-side covers, but my favourite was on the Disposable Teens CD. One of those two pressings had a B-side, and it was an acoustic version. It was Marilyn Manson singing "Working Class Hero," the John Lennon song.
Yeah, well, that's a kind of perfect song for him.
Yeah, and especially for his voice again in that era,
Yeah.
and it had that cracked quality to it, and that just fucking destroyed me, man. That was just because it was one of my. I mean, I always think like, for me, it's kind of everything. This is a ridiculous thing to say.
No.
You could almost put your finger on everything that's wrong with the world.
Yeah.
When you understand the fact that. Imagine was the A side and Working Class Hero was the B side on the
Yeah.
same disc. Because
Yeah.
any sane world, that's the other way around. Because Imagine's fine, but it's so saccharine and it's so anodyne. And Working Class Hero is the same song, it's the same message, but Working Class Hero is like, no, this is what it's actually fucking like.
Yeah.
You know? This is the reality, and Imagine's all kind of like, hey, it could be really great, and Working Class Hero is like, yeah.
Imagine's passive. That's the difference, isn't it? Imagine is a totally passive song, and that even in its title, it's just imagine what the world is like. It's a yearning song, isn't it? And I hate that. I hate that. I hate the notion of yearning. It's like fuck no, anger, passion, desire, not yearning. It's totally. I totally get where you're coming from.
Whereas Working Class Hero is just this fucking howl of rage. It's just this, they hit you at home and they beat you at school till you're so fucking crazy you can follow their rules. I mean, it's just like, that's it, man. That's the reality. That's what it is. And, Manson covering that and putting that out again with the A side being Disposable Teens. I mean, he knew exactly.
Well, the thematic resonance between the two of them is so clear, isn't it? It's
absolutely.
so clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't even know at this point now, after we've been speaking for like an hour and a half, I still don't quite know how to quantify the phenomena of him, because he was. No. It's hard to express now, isn't it? Because he was something that just dropped into culture like this black, bizarre meteorite, that transformed everything. He's like a Lovecraftian meteorite filled with something alien, And
and as
things changed, things changed because of him.
Yeah. But you can see the cultural building blocks. You can see what came before. You can
Oh,
see the
totally.
foundations. You know, you could see Alice Cooper and Shot Rock. You could see the Kiss thing phenomenon. You could see those kind of antecedents, and you could see metal was getting more extreme at that period. It
Yep.
was starting to go back into this thing, but it's, you know what it is, and it's what we've been talking about throughout. It's the way he just collided so many things together.
Just threw them all together, yeah. Because
That's
people,
it.
what I find interesting is when people describe what his stuff is, and they call it like, they call it metal, they call it
Yeah.
kind of grunge, sort of, they call
Yeah.
it this, they call it that, but it's not any of them.
No.
Really, it's what happens when you chuck them all together in a blender and you press puree.
Yeah, but also it shifts album to album. That's the beauty of those three albums, is they're three very distinct creatures. You know,
Yeah.
Antichrist Superstar you could call industrial. It's certainly got strong industrial metal influences, but it's so
Definitely.
much more than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's also like rave and drug influences going on there, you
Yeah.
know, almost like clubbish influences.
Right, and those develop on Mechanical Animals, which you
Oh,
could,
Mechanical Animals could be sort of like an almost Prodigy style,
yeah.
you know, album. It really
But,
could.
but Prodigy meets glam rock, right?
Yeah,
There's that
yeah.
whole thing in there, and it's all. And of course, the Bowie influence, especially on Mechanical Animals, is absolutely gigantic. I
Yeah.
mean, I love the moment in Don't Like the Drugs where they actually sing the word "fame" in the background, like,
Yeah,
acknowledging
yeah.
this is where we got this bass line from. You know,
Yeah.
he's not even trying to hide it. You know, and obviously
God,
that,
I love that one. If I, you know,
I
gun
adore
to head, if I had to say, I mean, I like a lot of them for different reasons, but if I had to, gun to head, favorite, probably, I don't like the drugs.
yeah, it's a great tune. I mean, I think for me, it's probably. I mean, Fight Song's right up there, but I think it's probably the Reflecting God from Antichrist. I think that is just a fucking phenomenal piece of work. It's because it's the ultimate kind of, you know, suicide by fan kind
Yeah.
of, the whole fantasy of that, but also just the thing about, like, I mean, that chorus is just so good, man.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like, and the whole thing about, I saw heaven and hell were lies, when I'm God everyone dies. I just love it. It's just so, because it is nihilistic, but it's so like, it's so angry, and it's so magisterial and so like sweeping. And then of course, like, what he's really doing is he's yelling at you to shoot him. You know, that's the ultimate thing. It's like he's daring you to shoot. You know. And the Reflecting God, they did it when I saw them at Manchester. They did that for the encore, and I just went.
Did you go to bits? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I was in the pit, man. I left bits of myself behind in that
Brilliant.
pit. I'm telling you, man. It was great. It was really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fantastic, and I love that. I love Fight Song. I love Disposable Teens. That's
Disposable
a
Teens is great.
really
I mean,
good song.
that's kind of one of the most iconic Manson tracks, isn't it? That's one of the ones
Yeah.
that a lot of people who don't necessarily listen to him know.
Yeah, but I also really like. I mean, I really like Coma White. You know, I mean, that's a fucking great tune, man. It's so. The thing I like about Mechanical Animals, and it happens on a few songs. The Speed of Pain's another one. There's this. There's a sense. I get like an almost physical sensation of coldness at times. You know, there's some of those guitar sounds, especially the kind of really thin, almost razor wire quality to it. You know, it does actually give me chills. Like, I feel physically cold.
Oh
You
yeah,
feel,
I mean,
you
this
know,
is something I really get from Manson now more than before. Actually, if you can do the Nine Inch Nails things with his music, so you just put the album on, put your headphones on and close your eyes, lie down somewhere and close your eyes, and you will get these various sensations occurring. You will actually physically respond to the music, and you will get hallucinatory sort of visions occurring behind your eyes. It's a real sensual experience. You know, I would advise, if you want to listen to Manson, do the video thing, watch the videos, but afterwards, try and find an album and just listen to the music on your own in like a darkened room somewhere, and appreciate the sensations that they evoke. And I think you'll have something of an experience there.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting. I was thinking about, because I do like the first album a lot. It clearly is still an artist in development, but there are some lovely moments there. Lunchbox is great. My Monkey is fucking glorious.
Yeah.
There's a real demented glee.
It makes me laugh. I don't know why it makes me laugh.
No, it's joyous. It is. It's demented. It's beautiful. I love it. I love the energy of it. I love that insane helium vocal, or whatever the hell's going on. Helium through a loudspeaker, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but it's fucking great. But I do think, like, as much as, I think that the highs from Antichrist and the highs from Hollywood are absolutely spectacular. I do think Mechanical Animals, I still feel that that's the most accomplished as a complete piece.
That's my favourite of the albums, I've got to say. It just speaks to me somehow. I like that slightly industrial thing that's going on in that. I really, really appreciate that. And it may be the Bowie influence, actually, because I'm a huge Bowie fan. But I also think that has some of the best videos as well attached to it. I really love the videos from Mechanical Animals.
Oh, they're great. Have you seen the one where he reenacts the Kennedy assassination with himself as Kennedy? And he has was it Rose McGowan as his fiance at the time, as Jackie O climbing over the limo. My God.
He's taking these iconic American images from American culture and history, and he's playing with them in a way that's designed to provoke. It's designed to provoke.
Yeah. No, that was just glorious. I remember seeing that and just being like, you fucking crazy man.
Yeah, I remember seeing it for the first time and thinking, you know what, you might have pushed it too far here, man. There may be people who really respond badly to this, Yeah. I mean, like, some people amongst your fans might respond badly to this, so please be careful.
Yeah, right. I hope security is really good. Yeah. But that was like, I think that was the thing, wasn't it? There was that real feeling with Manson that there was no sacred cow was going to go unslaughtered.
Oh, yeah, not a thing. Nothing is sacred. Not a thing. Nothing is out of bounds for it.
This is scorched earth artistry.
Totally. And I think there's something about people who sort of maybe appreciate horror or who are horror writers or artists where it's like, nothing's out of... No, there is no subject. There's no subject. Of course there isn't. It's all human experience. It's all worth exploring.
Yep, absolutely.
But yes, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, this is What the Hell Is Wrong With Us, and...
we're ready to start. That's good.
I think we've just about started. And this was we shifted gears a bit for this one. Once again we sort of switched to a slightly different subject this time round. This is the first piece of music. This is like the first musical artist we've done, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's right.
It is. Yeah. So we've covered quite a lot thus far. We've done rather well.
I like it. I mean, I just feel like it's important that part of it's keeping it fresh, right? But I also just think it's in keeping with the nature of the show, we're just following our passions.
Yeah, totally. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah,
to be honest, that's the way to do it. So, is there any concluding thoughts, Kit, on the music and the phenomena of Marilyn Manson?
I mean, I think that you hit it when you talked about, like, it definitely was of its time. I've been thinking about this a lot, especially in relation to music. And I mean, the fact of a musical recording is that it is time travel. It captures a very specific, a vibration that's being produced in the air. Physically produced at a specific time in a specific place. And
so it is like physically a time capsule. Yeah, in a very, very, very literal way. Yeah. I never thought of it like that, but yeah.
And I think that in the same way that, well, I had a conversation yesterday on a different podcast with someone else about talking about literature, but in that context, we were talking about how the thing that I value about famous pop literature of a given era is the way it gives you a window into that era.
Yeah.
It helps you see it more clearly. So like you see what the upper class thought 50s Britain looked like when you read Fleming. You
Yeah.
see what Victorian England looked like when you read Arthur Conan Doyle. If you were a man of, a gentleman of leisure,
Yeah.
that's what the world looked like. And because they were good writers, you see the things they probably didn't want you to see as well, right? I mean, that's the point with that level of honesty. And I think for me with Manson and with these 3 albums, they're kind of the musical equivalent of that.
Yeah.
They really do open you up to like, this is what was bubbling under the surface in these 3 or 4 years, and it is about that because
Of course it is. I mean, that is what Manson's about, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's raking the subconscious of culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's just spewing it up in front of you and saying, "Here's what I see." There's no.
Yeah.
I mean, in that sense, it does remind me of Natural Born Killers, where it's just like it's not. There's no attempt to explain. There's no attempt to provide a moral or a platitude or any kind or an explanation.
No.
It's just like, no, this is it.
This is the phenomena.
Right,
yeah, this is what's happening.
And I feel like those 3 albums really are, especially because of the kind of, his interrogation and obsession with Christianity, and particularly, the born again, the particular fundamentalist thread of Christianity that is so uniquely American.
Uniquely American. Sadly, not exclusively American anymore,
no,
but
very, very, very American. And I would say, both American and in many other respects unchristian. I just
yeah.
say
Well,
that.
totally. I mean,
in my opinion.
In your opinion, no. Objectively, objectively, in the sense that you can go to the Bible and you can look at what Christ said and you can look at what they do and what they worship and say, he's doing and proclaiming the opposite of what you're doing in his name, so fuck you.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
That was really angry. I don't know why that was.
A little, I don't know where that came from, but that's fine. That's,
that was very sublimated. I don't know what's going on there.
So you've been listening to too much Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, clearly.
It's corrupting your morals.
Yeah, clearly.
But and that's the thing, isn't it? Like this artist comes out and says, I am the Antichrist.
Yeah.
I am the Antichrist. And America lost its fucking mind.
Well, you have to bear in mind in the 1990s we hadn't really had that sort of mass atheist movement that the internet provoked.
No, that's right. That's right.
So this was at the time when the Christian right was in its absolute ascendancy. They controlled everything in American culture, they were everywhere. So to have that authority challenged by this grotesque upstart,
Yeah. And I still love that. I love that about him. I love that he came out and called himself that, and I love that he did the album. And I'll always, if he hadn't gone on and done the other 2, I think he would always have a place in my heart just for that. Yeah, because that was a big fucking deal. And it was, you know what, for me as well, it reminds me of that time of that period I had of intense alienation, of really just feeling disconnected from humanity, of not knowing what my place in the world was or what I really had to offer, or if I had anything to offer. I remember being obsessed with the notion of unintended consequences to the point where I was seriously contemplating not suicide, but probably some version of hermitage.
Yeah.
On a moral basis, on the basis that any action I took, however well intentioned, could end up causing harm. Yeah. And it became quite a dark kind of philosophical rabbit hole I was falling down at that point. And just, you can't put a price or a value on what it feels like when you're in that deep to have anything really that speaks to you and says you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's difficult.
There are other people in the world who have felt what you're feeling,
Yeah, and it's difficult to get that across, isn't it, when you don't have the experience or you're not part of the context. But I know exactly what you're talking about. It saves your life.
Yeah, it does.
It actually does save your life. It's I've had my brushes with depression and suicide and whatnot. I've had my brushes with them, and It sounds almost trite. It sounds like something that people just say for something to say, but it's the media, it's the stories, it's the art, it's whatever speaks to you, it's whatever can anchor you, or whatever can make you feel part of something, or that there's some reason to exist, that helps you get over it. It's what helps you come through, if you're lucky enough to.
Yeah, that's right. And and it's that's the thing that all the kind of knee-jerk haters out there were never going to get,
Yeah.
and obviously that's why I became such a zealous convert once I
Yeah.
became one, because I'd been on the other side of it and I'd sneered, and then I was
Yeah.
suddenly like, oh no, he gets it.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
really gets it.
Interesting.
And that's a great, that's a great feeling. Art like that, you can't put a price on it. It has a value that goes beyond, beyond the material. It really does.
Well, it saves your life and it saves your soul, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It saves you from a kind of self-authored damnation.
Yeah. And then of course, and eventually you sort of think to yourself, okay, so if he's out there in the world doing that, and that action is having this kind of consequence, then maybe, maybe there is a way. Maybe there's a way
Yeah.
to be who you want to be in the world without compromising the stuff that matters to you, and still be a person in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and again, I don't think you can undervalue, especially, what we talked about, like the audience he was talking to there was not, this wasn't music for jocks. This wasn't music for the high achievers. This wasn't music for the trust fund kids. This wasn't music for,
The A+ students.
Yeah, or anyone whose career was mapped out, who knew what they wanted to be. Or this wasn't the music for them. This was for those of us who were just felt alienated by the entire process.
Who feel alienated. Who feel apart from the world. Who feel like it wasn't made for them. Wasn't made for us.
Feel like you're walking around in an increasingly ill-fitting human suit. And then there's this guy going like, "Hey, check out my fucking ill-fitting human suit.
Yeah, right.
Mine doesn't fit at all. In fact, I'm not even wearing it anymore."
Yeah, it's something I will always appreciate about people like Manson. It's the fact that they teach you to celebrate the freakishness. It's the fact that they actually show you that actually there's nothing wonderful about being what they call human. About what the world calls human. So be what you like.
Yeah, absolutely, and
celebrate.
raise your
celebrate the shape of your soul.
Yep. Yeah, and raise your freak flag high, man. Just get the fuck on with it. And
it's the utopia of freaks. That's what it is. It's the utopia of freaks, and that. I mean, you've read my writing. You know what I want. you know what I want from the world.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I want. That's my vision of humanity.
Yeah. So I think that's it. I think Manson was as much as anything else a signpost.
Yeah.
Pointing at another way of being in the world, and I'll always be grateful for that. And getting me through being one of the keystone artists that got me through a dark period. And I do think it holds up. I think it holds up as a window into that world. And if you want to know what it was like to be teenage and alienated between the years of 1996 and 2001, you couldn't do much better, man. This will tune you right the fuck in.
Remember it very well. Remember it very well. Well, I think with that, Kit, we'll draw this one to a close. Now, I'm not even going to ask because I know you've got stuff to pimp out.
Shit, yeah. So
you've got a lot to pimp out, haven't you?
Christ, yeah. I'm going to get told off when I forget something. So, okay, so publications, I guess, they're the important ones.
Yep.
That get paid. So, okay, so non-fiction, Tommy. Tommy is out. My book on Ken Russell's movie Tommy. I actually recorded a commentary track for it this afternoon.
Right.
So that'll be going up. That'll be going up soon. So look out for that. That's Talking Tommy with Kit Power. You can find that on Anchor FM.
Excellent.
And that'll be going out soon. But yeah, the book's out. The Midnight Movie Monograph on Tommy, which
links below.
They've done such a beautiful job. PS Publishing, they put out this. It's a limited hardback, and
it looks great. I've got to say the actual book is gorgeous.
Yeah. it's a beautiful physical artifact, and I mean, having gone back through it, I'm proud of it. It was a lot of work, and I think that there was some really. I discovered some stuff on the page that I'm really kind of, really pleased with, and I think it's most fundamentally, like the thing I think is most important about any piece of writing is that it holds your attention for the length of time that it demands it.
Yeah.
So in other words, it doesn't. I don't waste your time.
Yeah.
and it is entertaining for the length of time that it runs. And I'm pleased with it. I think it's good, and I think the fact that we don't have statues to Ken Russell in this country is a fucking travesty. The man was a genius, and it's really nice for me, just in my own little way, to be waving the flag for that legacy, and just saying, hey man, pay attention to this fucking guy, because he's the real deal.
Brilliant.
So that's Tommy, go by Tommy. And then, so fiction, if fiction's more your bag, The Finite's out.
The Finite, yeah.
And is devastating everyone who reads it at the moment.
Yeah, those who liked our When the Wind Blows podcast, or who like When the Wind Blows, you will like The Finite. You will get something out of The Finite.
I hope so. I mean, When the Wind Blows, I've been explicit about this throughout. Very, massive influence on the book. It wouldn't exist without it. But at the same time, it's its own beast.
Yeah, totally.
And that's out now. That's from Black Shuck. Funnily enough, the guy who published that is the guy I recorded the Tommy cast with.
Oh,
so that's quite cute. So yeah, if you want to hear him talk about the book he didn't publish, then that's available. And that's it. And then there's the podcast, but you know about them. The Talking Tommy's going on. Kitting It, I think, is coming back soon.
Down there.
Yeah. And if you want to, as ever, if you want to read and hear the stuff I put out before anybody else does, patreon.com, $1 a month, you get something new every week before anybody else.
Excellent stuff. As for myself, the usual, ladies and gents, you can find me hanging around here on the Exaggerated Elegy channel, doing lots of bits and pieces. You can find my published work over at strangeplaygrounds.com and on Amazon. Born in Blood Volume 1, the latest. Please go and take a look. And you can also find me at Twitter on Enigmatic Elegy. And with that, Kit, I think we shall say goodbye.
All right, man. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.